Welcome to Talk Treatises,
where we guide you through the history of ideas.
I'm your host, and today we are doing a deep dive into territory that might seem at first glance a little messy.
But a departure for us, yeah.
Yeah, usually we're up in the clouds, right? Debating the nature of the soul or
the structure of the republic.
Exactly. But today, we're descending into the trenches of the human body.
Which I think is great because we tend to think of philosophy as this pristine, abstract discipline. You know, men in wigs sitting in salons drinking coffee and
discussing liberty.
Right, discussing liberty. But the history of medicine is actually where the rubber meets the road. It's practical philosophy.
Practical philosophy.
Yeah, it's the history of the question of how do we know what is true when a life is actually on the line?
And those are the stakes of the game today. We aren't just reading a book. We are looking at a literal battleground.
Absolutely.
The text is called An Account of the Sore Throat Attended with Ulcers, and it was published in 1748.
By John Fothergill, MD.
Now, I have to be honest with you. When I first saw the title, An Account of the Sore Throat, I thought, okay, are we really doing a whole deep dive on a scratchy throat?
Right, like, is this going to be an hour about lozenges?
Exactly. But then I started reading and I realized this isn't about a cold. This is about a serial killer stalking London.
That is a very accurate way to frame it.
Yeah.
To understand why this text matters and why it's a philosophical document as much as a medical one, we really have to set the scene.
So paint the picture for us.
Okay, so it's the late 1740s, London. The Enlightenment is in full swing. Isaac Newton has been dead for a couple of decades, but his influence is everywhere.
The intellectual class firmly believes that the universe is a machine, right?
Completely.
Yeah.
It's orderly. It operates by strict mathematical laws.
The clockwork universe.
Exactly, the clockwork universe. And the baseline assumption was that the human body was just another part of that clockwork.
Just meat and tubes.
Right. If you understood the hydraulics, the pressures, the levers, you could fix anything. Science was supposed to be completely triumphing over superstition.
But then in 1747 and 1748, something arrives in London that completely defies that machine logic.
A ghost in the machine.
A very deadly ghost. A malady appeared that looked like a typical sore throat, but it was killing people with terrifying speed.
And the crisis, the whole reason we're doing this deep dive today is that the enlightened medical community didn't know what to do.
In fact, their reason and their logic were actually making things way worse.
Actively killing people, yeah.
This is the central conflict. It's not just man versus disease. It's dogma versus observation. You have the established medical wisdom on one side and a pile of dead bodies on the other.
And John Fothergill is the man standing right in the middle trying to bridge that gap.
He's a Quaker physician, too, which I found to be a really interesting detail.
It is, because the Quakers were known for their plain speech and their rigorous honesty. He looks at the standard of care, what everyone absolutely agreed was the right thing to do, and he realizes it is acting as an accelerant for death.
So his one-sentence thesis here is pretty radical for 1748.
Very radical.
He's arguing that empirical observation, what you actually see happening right in front of you, must override traditional medical theory.
Right. Specifically, he argues that this new putrid disease requires supporting the patient's strength, warming them up, giving them cordials.
Rather than depleting them with bleeding, which was the gold standard.
It sounds so simple to us now. Don't bleed the sick person. But in 1748, that was heresy.
It was like telling a modern mechanic to fix a car by pouring sugar in the gas tank. It went against the fundamental understanding of how the body worked.
Before we get into the mechanics of the cure, let's talk about the monster itself. Fothergill starts the text by admitting something that I found quite humble, actually.
Yeah, he says this disease isn't actually new to the world, it's just new to him.
Exactly. He's a scholar before he is a polemicist. He traces the lineage of the disease backwards.
He points out that this specific type of throat horror had ravaged Spain back in 1608.
And Naples in 1618.
And the Spaniards had a name for it that, well, it kind of lingers with you.
Garrotillo.
Garrotillo.
It's a direct reference to the garrote, the strangling rope used to execute criminals.
That gives you a very visceral sense of what this disease actually felt like.
It wasn't just pain. It was a mechanical closing of the airway. It felt like being slowly strangled to death by an invisible executioner.
And what did the Italians call it?
They called it morbus strangulatorius, the strangling disease. Fothergill goes back and he reads the authorities from that time. Men like Severinus Cortesius Scambatus.
And he sees that they were grappling with the exact same questions. Was it a plague? Was it a poison?
But then, and this is the part that feels like the start of a horror movie, the disease just vanishes.
It just goes entirely dormant.
For over a century.
Which is wild to think about.
Yes, from roughly 1620 until the late 1740s, this specific presentation of the disease basically disappears from the medical record in Northern Europe.
And this creates what Fothergill calls a gap in knowledge.
Because the disease was gone for so long, an entire generation, maybe even 2 or 3 generations of doctors, lived their whole lives without ever seeing a single case of the Garatillo.
So the institutional memory was wiped clean.
Completely wiped. And this is a really profound point about the fragility of medical knowledge, especially in an era before standardized databases and the internet.
Medicine was largely an oral tradition then, right? Passed from master to apprentice.
Right. If the master never saw the Garatillo, he couldn't teach the apprentice how to spot it.
So when it finally comes back to London in 1747, the doctors look at it and say, oh, red throat, fever, trouble swallowing. I know what this is.
It's a common sore throat. It's tonsillitis.
They mistook a monster for a nuisance.
They categorized it based on the superficial similarity pain in throat rather than the underlying nature. And that categorization error is what ended up killing thousands of people.
Let's walk through the phenomenology of the disease. I want to really understand what these doctors were seeing and what they were missing. Fothergill is incredibly detailed in his descriptions.
He has to be. He's literally trying to train the reader's eye. He says the onset is deceptive.
Right.
It doesn't explode. It creeps.
It starts with chills.
A shivering, he calls it, like an ague fit.
An ague is what they called malaria-like intermittent fevers, right?
Exactly. So you get the shakes, and then the heat comes. But it's not just a normal fever. It's a jagged, erratic heat.
And then the throat changes color. He describes it as a florid red.
He compares it to erysipelas, which is a bacterial skin infection. St. Anthony's fire, they called it.
So imagine the tonsils and the uvula, that little punching bag at the back of your throat, turning a deep, angry, almost purple red.
And they swell up.
But the hallmark, the real signature of the killer here, are the spots.
The white spots.
Now, most of us have had strep throat. You look in the mirror, you see white patches, you take antibiotics, they go away. But Fothergill is very insistent that we understand these specific spots are different.
This is a crucial distinction. In a common sore throat, the white stuff is usually pus or exudate sitting on top of the tissue. You could physically wipe it off. But Fothergill describes the spots in this disease as gangrenous colloquation.
Gangrenous colloquation. That sounds incredibly structural.
It means the tissue itself is actually liquefying.
Right.
It is turning into a slough.
So the white spot isn't something on the tonsil, it is the tonsil dying.
Exactly. It is mortification of the flesh.
God, so it's literally rotting in place.
Yes. And if you tried to scrape it off, which some doctors did, you weren't removing a crust, you were digging straight into raw dying meat.
And yet, despite that absolute horror, Fothergill points out a treacherous symptom that tricked everyone. The pain.
Or the lack thereof.
Right. He says patients often swallow with less pain than in a common cold. How's that even possible? Your throat is rotting, but it hurts less.
That is the trap. Think about a common inflammatory sore throat. A quinsy, as they might call it. It's swollen hot tight. Every swallow feels like razor blades because the nerves are inflamed and hypersensitive.
Okay.
But in this putrid disease, the tissue is becoming gangrenous. It's dying. And dead nerves don't send pain signals.
That is chilling. So the doctor asks, does it hurt to swallow? The patient says, a little, but I can manage.
And the doctor thinks, great, it's mild, nothing to worry about.
Meanwhile, the patient is decomposing. It creates a complete false sense of security.
And that false security extends to the mind, too. Fothergill describes a specific type of delirium that is really unsettling. He talks about a false composure.
This is one of the most observant parts of the text. Usually with a high fever, you expect raving. You expect the patient to be thrashing around.
But Fothergill notes that these patients often answer questions properly. They know who they are. They know where they are.
But they answer with what he calls unusual quickness.
Like they're on a delay. Or actually too fast.
Too fast, a brittle alertness.
Or they talk to themselves when they think no one is looking. It's a subtle mania. It's a sign that the toxin is affecting the brain, but it's mimicking sanity.
It's basically the walking ghost phase.
And then there's the smell.
The fetid, putrid smell.
Fothergill notes that this often affects the throat and nostrils before the ulcers even appear. You can literally smell the death before you can see it.
So imagine you're a doctor in 1748. You walk into a room, the patient is sitting up, they seem alert, maybe a little chatty, they say their throat doesn't hurt that much, but the room smells like rotting meat.
That is the red flag.
Yeah.
That smell is the diagnostic tool. If you miss that and you treat it like a normal sore throat, you will kill the patient.
Let's talk about that treatment, because this is where we have to really get into the technical mindset of the 18th century. We look back and say, why did they bleed people? That's barbaric.
But it wasn't barbaric to them. It was deeply logical.
It was rigorous logic based on a specific model of physics. You have to understand the humoral theory, but specifically how they viewed information.
Right. Break it down for us. What is inflammation to a doctor in 1748?
Okay, so they viewed the body as a hydraulic machine. Veins and arteries are pipes. Blood is the fluid. If you have a fever, a red face, bounding pulse, and heat, that means there is too much pressure in the system.
There is a plethora, an excess of blood.
Right, like a boiler that's about to burst.
Exactly. The heat is caused by friction. The blood is rushing too fast through pipes that are too full.
So if the problem is too much pressure causing heat, what is the engineering solution?
You open a valve.
You release the pressure.
And you perform a phlebotomy.
Yeah.
You bleed them. By reducing the volume of blood, you reduce the friction, which reduces the heat. It makes perfect sense if you accept the premise.
And they also used purging.
Cathartics, laxatives. Again, the idea is evacuation. Get the bad stuff out. Lower the energy of the system. Cool it down.
This was the absolute standard of care. If a patient had a fever and you didn't bleed them and they died, you could be accused of malpractice.
You failed to lower the pressure.
So enter the sore throat with ulcers. It looks like inflammation. The throat is red. There is fever. So the doctors do what they are trained to do. They bring out the lancets.
And the results were catastrophic. Fothergill writes, and you can really feel the frustration in his ink that bleeding these patients acted as a fatal catalyst.
Well, why? What was happening physiologically?
Fothergill argues that this disease is not inflammatory in nature. It looks like it, but it's the exact opposite. He calls it putrid.
Putrid versus inflammatory. This is the main event.
Think of it this way. Inflammation is a fire. It's high energy. You douse it with water by cooling, and you take away the fuel by bleeding.
Okay.
But putrefaction is rot. It's decay. It is a fundamental loss of vitality.
Yeah.
If you have a piece of meat that is rotting, do you want to drain the juices out of it and leave it limp?
No, you want to preserve it. You want to pickle it. You want to add alcohol. You want to stiffen it.
So Fothergill realizes that the patients aren't dying of too much life. They're dying of not enough.
Precisely. The putrid virus, and we'll get to that term in a minute, was attacking the structural integrity of the body. It was dissolving the tissues.
When the doctors bled the patients, they were lowering the pulse. They were weakening the body's ability to hold itself together. Fothergill notes that after bleeding the sluice, the dead tissue would spread rapidly.
It just opened the gates.
It removed the last defense. The body needs energy to wall off gangrene. If you bleed the patient, you take away that energy. The gangrene spreads, the pulse flutters, and the patient dies.
Let's talk about that term virus, because Fothergill uses it, but he doesn't mean what we mean today. He hasn't seen an electron microscope.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
In 1748, the word virus comes from the Latin for venom or poison.
Yeah.
He's talking about a chemical quality, a miasma.
He posits that there is a specific particle in the air or in the breath of the sick person that acts like a ferment.
Like yeast.
Yes. Like a drop of sour yeast falling into a batch of dough. It spreads through the habit, the constitution, and turns the fluids of the body putrid.
So if the disease is a poison that weakens the cure, must be an antidote that strengthens.
That is the big pivot. He moves from a depleting strategy to a supporting strategy.
I want to look at the victims. Fothergill uses case studies to prove his point. And I think this is where the text stops being abstract and starts being really heartbreaking.
These aren't just statistics. They are his neighbors.
He uses them as empirical weapons. He is basically saying to his colleagues, you have your theories about inflammation, but I have this dead 26-year-old woman. Explain her.
Let's talk about her, the gentlewoman.
Case study 1. She is 26. Fothergill describes her constitution as pale and lax. She was previously indisposed.
This is important. He's building a profile of the vulnerable. She gets the sore throat.
And she is treated by the book.
She is bled, she is purged, she is given cooling medicines.
And Fothergill describes the result. He says she developed a glossy dryness in the throat.
That phrase really sticks with me, glossy dryness.
It implies that the mucous membranes have just stopped functioning. The life has gone out of the tissue. It's like old parchment. She dies on the 3rd day.
3 days. from sore throat to death.
And Fothergill uses this to argue that the bleeding accelerated it. Her lax habit meant she didn't have any blood to spare. The treatment pushed her right off the cliff.
Then there is the girl on crutches.
A 12-year-old. He notes she is big-boned but sedentary because she needed crutches. This implies she might have had rickets or some other chronic issue.
She doesn't die of the fever, though. She dies mechanically.
Fothergill describes the swelling, the edematous tumor of the neck. Her neck swells until it is flush with her jaw. The whemoglottitis, the opening of the windpipe, simply closes shut.
She suffocated.
She suffocated because the tissue around her airway became so engorged with putrid fluid that absolutely no air could pass.
And again, Fothergill argues that if they had supported her strength, she might have had the power to keep breathing. But the depletion left her muscles too weak to fight the swelling.
The third case is the boy with the leprosy-like skin. This one felt like a scene from The Exorcist, honestly.
It is easily the most disturbing description in the text. This boy was treated by a different apothecary, someone who didn't know Fothergill's methods. They bled him aggressively. They purged him.
And the result wasn't a cure. It was madness.
Delirium. And then Fothergill describes the specific behavior, gathering bedclothes.
Carphalugia.
Yes, carphalogia. It comes from the Greek karphos for chaff and legend to collect. Literally gathering chaff.
It's a repetitive involuntary movement where a delirious patient picks at the sheets or their clothes or tries to grasp imaginary objects out of the air.
Why do they do that?
It's a sign of profound neurological failure. The brain is misfiring. In medical folklore, and definitely in Fothergill's time, it was widely considered a sign of impending death.
If the doctor sees you picking at the air, he starts writing the death certificate.
Exactly. So Fothergill sees this boy picking at his sheets, destroyed by the bleeding, and he realizes we are killing them. We're literally draining the life out of them.
So he proposes the solution, the warm regimen.
And this is where the controversy really explodes, because if bleeding is cooling, then the opposite is heating. And what is the most potent heating agent in the 18th century pantry?
Wine.
Alcohol.
Specifically red port wine or mountain wine.
No, wait. If I have a fever and I'm burning up and my doctor hands me a glass of port, that feels completely counterintuitive, even today.
It does. But remember the putrid theory. The body is rotting. Alcohol is an antiseptic. It preserves things.
Fothergill argues that the generous cordial does two things. First, it acts chemically to stop the putrefaction. Second, it boosts the pulse.
It keeps the engine revving high so the body can push the toxins out to the skin.
He prescribes a lot of it, too.
He does. Wine mixed with whey wine and gruel wine and sage tea. He is essentially keeping the patient mildly intoxicated and highly caffeinated with aromatic teas to prevent the system from totally collapsing.
He also has a very specific menu for what to do with the throat itself. The gargles.
Topicals. For mild cases, he suggests sage tea with vinegar and honey.
Which honestly is still a pretty good sore throat remedy today.
It really is. But for the bad cases.
He brings out the heavy artillery, a decoction of contrarierva root, which was a tropical root thought to be an antidote to snakebite, tincture of myrrh, and vinegar.
And Mel-Egyptiacum.
Egyptian honey. This is a very old pharmaceutical preparation. It's honey, vinegar, and verdigris.
Verdigris, like a green rust on copper?
Exactly. Copper acetate. It is highly caustic. It burns. He is telling doctors to take a brush, dip it in copper and vinegar, and physically paint the ulcers in the throat.
That sounds incredibly painful.
It was. But the idea was to chemically burn out the rot.
Yeah.
To cauterize the gangrene without destroying the healthy tissue underneath.
And this is a massive, but there is one thing he says you must never do, even though it looks like you should.
The debate on scarification. This is Fothergill's moment of greatest restraint. A previous expert, Severinus, had said, if you see dead tissue, cut it out. Scrape it off.
Which makes sense, right? Debridement. We do it today for wounds.
We do. But Fothergill observed that in this specific disease, scraping the white spots was universally fatal.
Why?
Because that white rotting material was acting as a temporary dam. If you ripped it off before the body had healed underneath, you were exposing raw, undefended blood vessels directly to the putrid virus.
The infection would dive deeper instantly.
He describes cases where a doctor scraped the tonsils, and the very next day, the gangrene had spread all the way down the esophagus.
So the discipline here is doing nothing, or specifically not doing the thing that your medical instinct tells you to do.
It's the discipline of the pure observer. He had to stand there, look into a child's throat, see a terrifying white patch, and say, leave it alone. Let it fall off when it's ready.
That takes nerves of steel.
He also mentions blisters. applying blistering agents to the neck.
Counter-irritation. The theory was create a blister on the outside skin to draw the poison away from the inside throat, like a magnet.
It probably didn't do much, but it fit the overall theory of moving the miasma out of the vital centers.
Now, Fothergill doesn't just look at the bodies, he looks at the sky. He includes a whole section on environmental and meteorological factors.
He's a good Hippocratic physician. Airs waters in places. You cannot understand the disease if you don't understand the atmosphere it lives in.
He tracks the weather of 1747 and 1748.
He notes it was unusually warm. He says the thermometer hit 78 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade, which for London in autumn is basically a heat wave.
And it was humid.
Stagnant. Fothergill links the putrid nature of the air to the putrid nature of the disease. In his mind, the air itself had become like a swamp.
It was rotting the leaves, it was rotting the food, and it was rotting the throats of the children.
It's the miasma theory.
Yes. But it's not just blind superstition. It was their way of understanding environmental vectors. They knew that swampy, hot, stagnant air made people sick. They just didn't know it was because of mosquitoes or bacteria.
They thought the air itself was chemically changing.
So Fothergill writes this treatise. He sends it out into the world. What is the result? What is the lasting legacy of this text?
He concludes with 6 propositions. It's his executive summary. 1, the disease is a putrefaction. 2, the cause is a specific virus or miasma. 3, the cure lies in promoting discharges via the skin sweat eruption, not depleting the blood.
And the big takeaway.
The epistemological shift. The text stands as a massive warning against treating the symptom instead of the cause. Just because it looks like inflammation doesn't mean it is inflammation.
It is a call for flexibility. It is Fothergill saying, I don't care what Galen said 1,500 years ago. I care that this child died when you bled her and lived when I gave her wine.
It's the triumph of the clinic over the library.
Precisely. It marks the beginning of a modern clinical approach where actual results matter more than ancient dogma.
Before we move to our thought experiments, I want to clear up one thing. We keep calling it the sore throat with ulcers. Do we know what it actually was in modern medical terms?
It's a subject of debate, but the consensus is diphtheria.
Diphtheria.
The strangling angel, the white spots that turn black, that's the pseudomembrane of diphtheria. The smell, classic diphtheria.
The suffocation, that's the membrane closing the airway.
Yeah.
The sudden death from heart failure. Diphtheria toxin attacks the heart muscle directly.
So Fothergill was describing one of the great killers of children centuries before we had the antitoxin.
And he managed to figure out a way to improve survival rates simply by observing that the standard treatment was wrong. He didn't cure it, he couldn't kill the bacteria, but he stopped the doctors from killing the patients.
Which, in the history of medicine, is a massive victory. First, do no harm.
Indeed.
All right. We have looked at the horror. We have looked at the history. Now it is time to take these ideas and stretch them until they snap.
It is time for thought experiments.
My favorite part. Now, disclaimer time. These experiments are for entertainment and educational purposes only. Do not diagnose your neighbors based on their smell. Do not treat your sore throat with port wine and copper rust. Go to a doctor.
Please.
Experiment number 1. The Constitution audit.
Walk me through it.
Fothergill argues that lax, inactive, or previously indisposed people die. The pale and lax habits, while robust ones might survive. He basically identifies specific risk groups based on their biological habit or constitution.
Right. Biological determinism. Your body type dictates your fate.
So imagine you're living in a society that takes this to the absolute extreme, a society that strictly categorizes citizens by constitutional habit. You have the lax and the robust. It's printed right on your ID card.
A biological caste system.
Exactly. Now, a pandemic hits, maybe something exactly like this putrid sore throat. In this society, medical resources like the warm regimen, the wine, the cordials are scarce.
Okay.
Does the state deny treatment to the lax because Fothergill says they are likely to die anyway? Sorry, you're pale and inactive. The data says you're a bad investment.
That is brutal triage. It's utilitarianism with a really dark biological edge.
Or let's flip it. Does the state force the robust to serve as frontline caregivers? Fothergill says adults usually only get it if they are physically close to the sick. So does the state say, you, sir, are big-boned and red-faced. You are now drafted to work in the feeble wards because your constitution can withstand the breath of the sick.
That is fascinating. It tests the ethics of immunity. If your body is naturally more resistant, your habit is strong, does that automatically create a moral obligation to serve?
We struggle with this now. I'm young and healthy. Why should I wear a mask versus I'm vulnerable, I need protection?
But in the Constitutional Honor Society, that isn't a choice. It's a law. The strong are the physical shield for the weak, whether they want to be or not. Or in the darker version, the weak are simply discarded to save resources for the strong.
It's Fothergill's observation of risk groups taken to a totalitarian extreme.
It makes you realize how dangerous medical categorization can be when it leaves the clinic and enters politics.
Experiment number 2, the miasmatic breath filter.
I like the sound of this one.
Fothergill identifies the breath of the person as the primary vector for the putrid virus. He implies that the breath itself literally carries the poison. He also notes the fetid smell as a crucial diagnostic tool.
A nose knows.
So imagine a world where social interaction is governed entirely by olfactory diagnosis.
Go on.
Maybe it's high-tech chemical sensors in every doorway, or maybe it's low-tech, highly trained smellers standing at the entrance to the subway. They constantly monitor the putridity of breath in public spaces.
Like a breathalyzer, but for contagion.
Yes. The moment a specific fetid marker is detected, before you even feel sick, before you have a sore throat, the alarms go off. You are isolated.
This parallels Fothergill's observation perfectly. He mentions Cortesius, who thought contagion was limited, versus the Italians who saw it as completely pestilential. This scenario sides with the Italians. It assumes your breath is a weapon.
The philosophical test here is the tension between privacy and public safety. Usually my breath is my business, it's inside me. But in Fothergill's world, my breath is a cloud of putrid particles that can literally kill you.
It redefines the boundaries of the self. If my exhalation is a projectile, then I don't have the right to exhale in public without regulation. In a miasmatic breath filter society, there is no such thing as personal space because we all share the exact same air.
And think about the stigma. If you have that fetid smell, you become an instant pariah. Even if you feel totally fine, it's the false composure weaponized against you. He looks fine, but the censor says he is rotting.
It's the ultimate preventative state, punishing the potential for sickness rather than the sickness itself.
It's terrifying, and not entirely unlike how we navigated temperature checks and rapid tests recently, but the smell aspect makes it so much more visceral.
It feels infinitely more intrusive. Smell is incredibly intimate.
Well, let's wrap this up. We've gone from the garrotillo to wine as medicine to olfactory surveillance.
It's been a journey.
Fothergill's legacy really is the triumph of pure observation. He saw that the standard of care was lethal and had the courage to propose the exact opposite. He swapped lancets for wine because that's what the evidence demanded.
He looked at the throat and believed what he saw, not what he was told to see. That is a lesson that applies to every single field, not just medicine.
And I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought.
Let's hear it.
Fothergill mentions that the disease disappeared for a century, from 1618 to 1748, and then returned. It vanished, and then it came back when the conditions were right.
The dormant monster.
Exactly. It suggests that diseases and ideas are cyclical. They don't die, they just go underground. So what extinct philosophical or medical crisis is currently dormant right now? What problem have we solved that is just waiting for the right warm autumn to return and catch us completely unprepared, just like the doctors in London in 1748?
That is a haunting thought. We assume progress is a straight line. Fothergill reminds us it's a circle.
Something to mull over tonight.
Indeed.
Join us next time for another deep dive on talk treatises. Read the text if you have the stomach for it.
It's well worth the read.
Stay curious.
And keep observing.